Recording in progress.
All right, good evening. This is the Historic Preservation Commission, and today is Monday, March 17th, 2025. And we'll have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Wilt. Commissioner Keller.
Here.
Commissioner Whidden.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Chair Haley.
Here. Thank you. Our agenda this evening, if anyone has any changes or additions. If there's nothing, we can make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And any public comments that are not on our agenda this evening? And seeing none, we don't have anyone online tonight. Thank you. All right, our first public hearing is for 600 Pine Street, which is a landmark hearing, and then we'll hear from staff first.
Good evening, Chair and Commission members. This is Emily Klein-Gibson.
Sorry, before you get going, there's an echo. Does anybody have, I'll check your devices and see if there's any volume. They said they have the hearing devices in yours. I'm getting an echo when we were too. Okay. Do you want me to kill it? Not necessarily, if it's helping you hear. Do you have into your laptop? No,
I think it's connected into the.
Okay. Got it. Sorry about that. We'll try this tomorrow.
Good evening. This is Emily Klein-Gibson, Planner 2, with the staff presentation. This is an application request for a landmarking and alteration certificate and a preservation and restoration grant for 600 Pine Street. This is a corner property located on the southeastern corner of Pine Street and Grant Avenue. For conditions over time, here are some photos of the subject property. The photos on the left show the house and floor plan from the 1948 assessor's card, and the images on the right are present-day photos of the property.
Real quick, I think it's coming out of the screen, this thing, on his.
Okay, let's see if we can turn that. Try to keep that. Down the bottom right-hand corner.
Get rid of that. Whoa.
Test.
It still seems to be echoing. Your volume is max.
Yeah.
Mine is max. Plug on.
Test.
Am I on the screen?
Testing. Sounds better. All right. Okay, so for conditions over time for 600 Pine Street, photos of the subject property. To the left shows the house and floor plan from the 1948 assessor's card, and images on the right are present-day photos of the property. Most notable difference is a second-story addition on the building. So to review this property against our landmarking criteria, the building was constructed around 1905, satisfying the 50-year requirement. The Queen Anne architectural style is relatively rare in Louisville and was likely listed as this style in the Paleo West historic context due to the gable facing Pine Street that features scallop-shaped shingles, Victorian ornamentation, and barge board. The front of the house facing Pine Street has been largely maintained, and the first-story windows appear to be original. However, the second-story addition in 1985 has altered the massing of the historic building. Social significance includes most notably the Malcolm family retaining ownership of the property for over 100 years, which during that time included military service in 4 different wars, downtown Louisville businesses for a barbershop and insurance office, and heavy involvement in local women's social clubs. It's also worth noting that the Malcolm family are still the property owners today. Along with the landmark application is an alteration certificate application to replace the existing chimney on the building. The chimney appears to be original to the historic home and is currently in disrepair. The alteration certificate would include breaking down the chimney to ground level and rebuilding it to the same height using the same brick material. And finally, also included in this application is a preservation and restoration grant amount for up to $4,250 to assist with the chimney repairs. Staff find that the chimney repairs request qualifies as rehabilitation work under our grant criteria, and chimney repairs was listed as a high priority item in the 2024 historic structure analysis for the property. So with all of this, staff recommends approval of Resolution 4, Series 2025, recommending approval of the landmark to be named the Malcolm House, approval of Resolution 5, Series 2025, approving the alteration certificate, and approval of Resolution 6, Series 2025, recommending approval of a preservation and restoration grant totaling up to $4,250. And this concludes staff presentation. I'm available for any questions, and the applicant is also present. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Thank you.
And we'll have the applicant, if you'd like to say anything.
Not really.
Yep.
She covered it pretty well.
All right. Thank you for being here. Any comments from the public? All right, we'll bring it back to staff or to commission discussion.
Is this working out?
Is it green? Oh, there you are.
There we go. I have a question. Was there some pictures or some evidence that that chimney was from the original structure? I wasn't seeing any shots.
I'm pretty sure it is.
I'm sorry?
I think it's, I mean,
I'm sorry, do you mind, it's being broadcast, do you mind going?
okay.
Yeah, based on the historic structure assessment, there was a diagram showing that the chimney was part of the original house.
The full height that it is now.
The very top of it was replaced because in a big storm, the top fell off and they had, but it was the same height.
Was, okay. Okay.
All right. So the top of the chimney was replaced in a storm.
Right, yeah, I
So-
got it.
Well, I'm just saying it on the mic for the
Oh,
record.
okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. Another question, with landmarking, if we were to landmark this, and this is a discussion for all of us, I guess,
Right.
and this bit of work was done just replacing the chimney with similar bricks, I'm taking it they're not going to try to reuse those existing bricks. Okay. If you do that, and when I read the report, a lot of this damage was caused by the location of the chimney being at the base of the valley, improper flashing, no real good drainage system off. Are we not then just kicking the can down the road a little bit and creating the same problem that's existing now. Wonder, I saw in the recommendation, they were recommending to remove the chimney and repair all of the damage to the house and the roof and then reflash. I don't know if I saw in the recommendations of replacing that chimney. You're not planning on activating the chimney, correct? It was just gonna be cosmetic?
Yeah. There's only one spot that really is a problem with the gutter or whatever, but yeah, I plan on doing something about that.
Would you mind just coming to the microphone? I know you don't want to, but just because we do have, I know, I'm sorry. We just want to make sure that everything is on record and it's just recorded. So that's the only reason. So if you'll just state your name and your city that you live in.
Victoria Malcolm in Louisville, Colorado. Yeah, there's just one little spot on the roof where there was never a gutter or whatever, that when it rains and snows, it all makes this giant icicle there. And yeah, I plan on doing something about that. I just didn't, I don't have a cost on that yet. But yeah, I know what you're saying about it. Otherwise, I got the same problem. Although
Right.
it took 100 years to get this bad, but
Right. I'm also wondering, is there a bigger plan for some of the other maintenance, restoration type of work, the foundation that's having some severe problems and things that look like, if you landmark it, you're basically saying this house is then, if something's gonna be done to it in the future, it's gonna have to come back and be approved and everything.
yeah.
I'm wondering if there is a plan that you could share with us as far as how much more you plan to do with it, or is this it? And
No, I plan to do more, but I can't afford to do more than this right now.
I get
It's
you.
going to be, piecemeal. I mean, some of the windows probably need to be replaced, and then there needs a couple more supports in the basement. And I don't know what else is on the list for now, but
no other bigger plan of removing some of the things that have been add-ons in the past that aren't part of the historic structure?
no.
Okay.
I would imagine too, when they replace the chimney, wouldn't they have to do some of the flashing, I mean, in general, just to
Would-
put it back up? So I would imagine that would be included.
I can hope so.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't in the bid. If you look at the bid,
Yeah,
no.
it wasn't in there.
I'm concerned for
specifically.
your own well-being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're well below the limits of what the grant program is there to help you with. And I would hate to see you get into this and then they start doing that work and say, oh, do you have your roofer hired to do the roof repairs? And do you have your siding crew hired to do their siding repairs? And then you're going, oh, this is thousands more. Why didn't we
Yeah.
look at doing that all at once so you don't get stuck holding a big bill you weren't looking for?
Well, I don't know if, I think the roof is okay, and I don't know what's behind the chimney as far as siding. I don't think there's actually siding back there.
Is the chimney up against the
Yeah.
wall? So whatever is back there has probably got a lot of water damage,
Possibly. I don't know.
which could open up a whole nother can of worms with other expenses. And I don't know if that's I'm new on this commission.
No,
So
that's
I'm
great.
learning as we go too.
Well, you have 5 years to come back too, though, so
Yeah, good,
know,
explain this. to me.
Right.
it's not a one-time deal.
Right.
Yeah, old
That's-
houses are full of worms.
Oh, yeah. So if
Right.
she gets this landmarking and gets the grant and they start doing that work and say, all right, it's gonna cost you this, this, and this, because you have all these other things. Right, and at that point, she could hold off on getting the chimney done till the other work is done and ask for additional grant assistance.
Okay.
Right.
I can't quite see the whole condition that's there, but typically for a chimney of that sort, when you have drainage coming down to it, you would have some sort of a cricket where it just essentially
Right.
triangulates it and gets it off to the side.
Yeah.
It's not a large chimney, so I think the cricket condition, it doesn't seem like an overly large concern to me, just initially, but I do respect that it's being brought up. And I would, if it was a larger chimney, and you had to get into more of the roof to do any of that sort of stuff, that would be a different item. So one of my questions would be, if we did go ahead and approve landmarking and landmark it as the Malcolm House, and then did do the preservation and restoration grant approval as well, could we make it conditional that the cricket was part of the cricket for the roof
It
is
is
part of the,
repair.
yeah. the
Cricket or some
request.
similar
Yes.
solution for the water. Yeah, water diversion, so we're not locking somebody into, they might have other
And-
better ideas when they look.
And I don't see it as being a large item.
Yeah, I don't either, but
Yeah.
If you had something that was like 5 feet in distance and you had to kind of take that up the roof by 5 feet as you chase the cricket back up, then I see it being a little bit more of an expense that comes with it. So,
yeah, it's not, I don't think it's going to be that tough to
yeah, that's kind of my perception.
fix that.
So basically just saying like, we just want to make sure the water diversion issue is taken care of when they replace the, yeah. And I think that is a good point, that if for some reason it does become a bigger project, you do have access. It's a matching grant, but you would have access to more funding if you need that at some point. So,
Okay.
any other questions? That's great.
Oh, I think it's wonderful that your generation is continuing on with it and going to do some things with it.
Yeah, well, I just didn't want it, how everything's getting wiped,
Yeah.
gone.
Good.
This way that it'll be around.
That's great.
Thank you for stepping up to the podium as well.
Yeah. You can sit down.
Hurry, run back.
All right. All right, so bring it back for discussion again. I think the age, social history is strong. I think the fact that the owners still live there definitely counteracts the changes that were made in the 80s. So that's kind of it's obviously been changed architecturally quite a bit, but I think it holds enough of the original, and the original family is the one that, or not the original. Are they the original? Original. Yeah. So original. So that's pretty amazing. So I think that carries a lot of weight for any changes they made over the years. So as far as landmarking.
I agree. I really enjoyed reading the history of the house, and it's such a cool thing that it's remained in continuous family ownership for such a long time.
It's a really prominent corner.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of my favorite houses in the neighborhood. I live real close by there.
It definitely has a lot of character. It's,
Yeah.
Would even like to make them, well, I guess we could put them together. Should we put them together just to make it easier? So for the grant, that's for the chimney replacement. And we're gonna add that there is water diversion included in that repair or replacement to avoid any future water damage.
so if we're putting that stipulation on her grant request, and the grant request is based on a bid without that, do we have the right to increase the grant request on her behalf to accommodate what we're requiring? You follow what I'm saying? If it's gonna cost you an extra, call it $2,000.
Yeah, I think if you wanted to, I think you could make a motion to say for the chimney repair, it won't exceed 4,250 as the match, and that you can allocate up to an additional maximum for a potential fix for the water diversion. I'm not sure how much you'd want to allocate for that. I don't know if Commissioner Anderson might have the most experience. I don't know if you'd make a recommendation.
Unfortunately, I don't price that out on a
Yeah.
regular.
Well, and
If I had to take a wild guess at it, I don't think it'd be more than 2,000 total, so 1,000 towards the grant portion seems
So I'd maybe
sufficient.
maybe recommend 1,500 in additional grant money, anticipating maybe up to $3,000 additional dollars of work.
for the water.
So you could include that in your recommendation. And then if the applicant is amenable to that, we can figure out how to craft that more specifically when this
Right.
goes to city council.
So basically, we're thinking that it might be up to 3,000.
3,000.
And so 1,500 would be what we would pay from the grant, and then potentially, if that would, then you would do the other 15, if that needs to be done. And it might be included. I just can't imagine it. I can't imagine the chimney repair not
They should.
doing all the water stuff. So
Yeah.
but I'm not a.
They just may not have included some of the detail in the
Right,
bid.
Just because it's assuming that they have to mitigate that. Yeah. So, does that sound fair to you? Just to cover half the cost if for some reason that's not included. Okay. Okay. Who wants to do this messy motion? We can do the landmark first if we just want to. Would that be easier to separate them, or do we want to do them together? Yeah,
We're
it's a-
doing all three, like the alteration
Oh,
certificate too.
okay. So alteration certificates her.
Yeah.
So we did the grant, and the alteration certificate is just saying that we would.
The chimneys.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'd recommend doing a motion for each one.
Okay,
in this
that's great.
case.
All right. Who wants the easy one?
I'll do the easy one. I'll make a motion to approve landmarking of the Malcolm House.
We'll do a roll call, please.
Second.
Oh, sorry. Second, and now we'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Wilt,
Agreed?
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Commissioner Whidden,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Chair Haley.
Yes. And then for the alteration itself, another easy one.
Want me to just do it again?
Sure.
Make a motion to approve the alteration certificate for the Malcolm House.
And we'll do a roll call, please.
I second the motion.
Sorry.
On the
This is so bad. What am I doing? Okay. And now we'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Wilt,
Yes.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Commissioner Whidden,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
and Chair Haley.
Yes. All right. And then the preservation and restoration grant for,
I will make a motion to approve the preservation and restoration grant for the replacement of the chimney with a like brick and like material and like size, shape, and height. Also, we will add in a conditional amount that could be, or I'm sorry, we'll add in a condition of cricket and water mitigation for the upper portion with a maximum matching fund of $1,500 if possible from this grant on top of what was proposed already.
perfect.
I'll second.
And we'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Wilt,
Yes.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Commissioner Whidden,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Chair Haley.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for taking care of your house and preserving it for years to come. And staff will be in touch with you just as far as the next steps. So, thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
Done any of it without some help, so.
Yep, that's what we're here for.
One step at a time.
That's right. All right, our next public hearing is for 945 Caledonia Street. This is a demolition review, and we'll have a staff report.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is Emily Klein-Gibson with the staff presentation. This is a demolition review application request for the property at 945 Caledonia Street. This property is located on the eastern end of Caledonia Street, where Caledonia and Front Street meet. This property is also directly behind the Louisville Fire Department station on Main Street. As a reminder, the purpose of demolition review applications is to prevent loss of buildings that may have historical and architectural significance and are reviewed against the criteria in section 1536-200, which includes the eligibility of the building for designation as a landmark, the relationship of the building as a potential contributing structure to a potential historic district, the reasonable condition of the building, and the reasonable projected cost of restoration or repair. For conditions over time at 945 Caledonia Street, the photos on the left show the house and floor plan from the original 1948 assessor's card, and the images on the right are present-day photos of the property. Based on the image comparison, there have been many changes made to the exterior of the property. For the first review criteria, which focuses on landmark eligibility, staff analyzed the existing structure against the historic photo from the assessor's card, information from the social history report, and building permit records against our landmark criteria. Staff find that the age and social significance of the structure meets landmark criteria. However, staff also finds that too many exterior modifications have been made to the structure to meet the architectural significance criteria. The most significant changes include changes in window size and locations, building additions, porch enclosure, and changed siding. Staff analyzed the proposal against all demolition review criteria and found that the age and social significance of the property does not constitute a strong enough case for landmark eligibility. The subject property is also not located in a geographically significant area that could make it a contributing structure in a historic district. No documentation is readily available regarding the condition of the building, and due to its significant architectural alterations, restoration work is not planned for this property, and so a cost estimate is not readily available. With all of this, staff recommends release of the demolition review request with no period of stay placed. Staff believes releasing the demolition request is appropriate because the existing structure differs significantly from the original form. The applicant has also been informed about preservation options and is proposing to pursue a house remodel plan that does not include restoration. In addition, staff does not find that the social significance alone merit a stay of demolition when weighed against these other considerations. And this concludes the staff presentation. I'm available for any questions. The applicant also has a short presentation as well. Thank you.
Any questions for staff?
No question?
All right, thank you. And if the applicant would like to speak, just say, state your name and city of residence.
Oh, thank you so much. Hi, my name is Nina Williams, and I am from Arvada. Thank you so much, Emily. I appreciate all your help. I'm just opening up, I guess, to Adobe. My name is Nina Williams, and my husband Byron wanted to be here in person, but it's pushing it past our toddler's bedtime, so he's on Zoom. I'm sorry, I'm trying to. Oh, here it is. Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for having it ready. It was up. Keeps doing this. Sorry.
It might be easier if you just plug in the flash drive.
Oh, okay. Sorry. That's okay. Oh, here it is.
Oh. Let's see.
It's a PDF too, though. So
PDF too.
I have my laptop. It's a PDF.
See, it's not just me that's AV challenged. Yeah.
Let's see. Looks like it's frozen. You want to take a 5-minute recess while we might have to reboot or something here is what I'm thinking. Okay, thanks.
Yep, we'll do a 5-minute recess.
Recording stopped.
We are back in session.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.
And if you'll state your name and
Yes.
I don't know if that got, if we did that or
Recording
not,
in
but
progress.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm Nina Williams. My primary residence is Northern Nevada. My husband Byron is home because we have a toddler that he had to put to bed, so he's on Zoom. And my architect is on spring break family vacation with her school-age children. Byron and I own 3 properties within the city. One of them includes 1314 Main Street, which is close to 945 Caledonia. It's only separated by the fire building. And I chose to have my law office there. I manage a law firm of 9 attorneys. We do local government law. We represent towns boards, including historic preservation commissions. So we are really invested in Louisville. This current home on the property is uninhabitable, has uneven floors, portions of the house are not safe. Therefore, parts must be demolished in order to remodel into a livable home. We're deciding between either moving our family there to make it our primary residence or rent it long-term to a family. But either way, we plan on retaining ownership of 945 Caledonia as well as 1314 Main Street for many decades. So this is our survey. So this, you can see the vinyl siding has replaced the original wood siding. This is the current picture. The windows are aluminum. They're not the original wood double-hung windows. This is a different elevation. The thin stone has been applied to the foundation as monotone. The soffit material is vinyl. It's not the original. The roof structure was also altered, so the original gable that was once visible from the south elevation was omitted. So you can see from these pictures, there's not really much original remaining. There's no historic materials to preserve. We would have loved to save historic elements if it wasn't modified so many times, but there's nothing to save or preserve. And again, the structure is uninhabitable. My husband and I did appreciate the historical background. We found it very interesting. We're going to frame some of those pictures, put around the house once renovated. I'm also a third-generation American. My Williams is my married name. My family, my great-grandparents were Italian immigrants, laborers, so I do feel a connection with the history, which was pretty cool. So now we're going to run through the various code criteria which we feel establish a release on the demolition permit is warranted and a stay on the demolition is not appropriate. So first is the architectural. You can see the existing character significantly altered. Like Emily had said, the building in the photo on the left is unrecognizable from what's today. And we put each factor in the top left on each slide. So it's unknown who the original architect or builder was. The existing structure, you can see, doesn't exhibit any craftsmanship or high artistic value. There's no example of architectural, structural innovation, standard wood construction with 2x4 rafters and a shed roof. We learned that the building was originally national style. It's compromised by the modifications and additions over the years. And then although there was built environment of a group of people in the era of history that's culturally significant to Louisville, the number of alterations substantially diminishes its significance. And none of this criteria seem relevant. The structure has been modified significantly, so there has not been a significant historic remodel. And then we turn to social. There's no known historic event that had an effect on the society of the site. And then we saw that the original house was classified national, and its gabled form and simplicity remain, but all the modifications that have altered beyond recognition, it no longer feels connected to the heritage of the community. Left is the history of the Main Street, and this is the current Main Street. So it doesn't really seem like there's much connection to the heritage. There's no notable person or work of a notable person associated with the property that's social. And then geographically, it's not a historic district, not surrounded by national landmark buildings. And the building's original form on the left is culturally significant, but the changes, the windows, the additions, compromise the integrity of the original form. That's it. Any questions?
Any questions for the applicant? Do you have any questions? Okay. No, you look like you're pondering something, so I shouldn't give you space.
Trying to get the buzz out of my ears.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Should I take my?
All right, any,
I'll be here.
are there any public comments on this property? And seeing none, we'll bring it back for discussion with the commission.
The only thing I could add is I went by the site and looked at it, and I agree 100% with everything the applicant has told us. And I don't see a lot of significance of trying to hold off and find a way to do a historic preservation on this project and landmark the project. So I agree with her assessment of it.
My instinct is similar. I think it's kind of remarkable how unrecognizable it is. I was really surprised by the age of the building because it's not obvious from looking at it. So it was really interesting to capture that history. But I'm inclined to agree with staff's recommendation and with the applicant, so.
Any differing opinions? I think the age of the structure was really significant, but yeah, it's not, it's definitely lost its architectural integrity to a point which I think doesn't really warrant keeping it, so, yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, Linda. And we've also declined to landmark other properties that had structural or uninhabitable status to them. So it's not like it's the first time.
Do you have anything to add?
I don't really have anything to add to it, no.
Okay. All right. Anyone want to make a motion on this one?
I'll make a motion that we approve the request to, what are we calling this, remove the,
Release the property?
the other one had the cheat sheet up there. I can't cheat, you know. Oh, Southern Disassembly. Take it down. Yeah, I don't know the proper terminology. The demolition review.
Yeah, I would just say approve the demolition request.
Okay. Yeah, I make a motion that we approve the demolition request at 945 Caledonia Street.
Second. Oh, go ahead.
I'll second.
And we'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Wilt,
Yes.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Commissioner Whidden,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Chair Haley.
Yes. All right, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
And often when we have demolitions too, like we just want to make sure that we get the social history, which I think is really important, and then also just make sure that we're in agreement. So just our process. Yep. Thank you for coming.
Look forward to see what you do there.
We're excited. Thank you.
All right, and then our next item is a discussion direction. It's our comprehensive plan. We'll have a staff report.
All right, good evening, Chair Haley, members of the commission, Rob Zuccaro with the Community Development Department. I'm going to be making the presentation on this. Since we are using a little different technology, give me a minute to download it here. All right, so we're back before you to review our comprehensive plan process. I think Jeff Hurt, our planning manager, was before you in February of last year to give you an initial update. To give you an initial update on this. So every 10 years, the city adopts a comprehensive plan. So our last one was adopted in 2013. We're a couple years behind because of the Marshall Fire, but it's a big process for the city. It's kind of our high-level overarching plan for the city for how we want to grow. It's a 20-year vision, but it's a 10-year plan. So we have a whole series of policies that generally give us some direction, both for city council and staff, on policy development projects that'll take place over the next 10 years. It has a really high focus on land use and development policy, but it also does touch on city services, infrastructure, transportation, all of these things. So this is the second update. We're at the point working with our consultants. We're working with the consultant design workshop, and they're at a point where they're creating the first full draft. We're probably about 2 months away from that. We're trying to have this plan adopted by late summer. So sometime around, I'm going to say June, we want to have the full draft out for public review. So we're actually going to every board and commission in the city and doing this type of presentation, making sure we're getting feedback. We're also working very closely with the Planning Commission. It's one of their duties is to help draft this comprehensive plan before City Council adopts it. So again, this isn't a regulatory document, so we're going to talk a little bit about some of the policies in and around downtown, because that's a lot of your focus, as well as Old Town. And again, it's overseeing future growth and development. So back in February of last year, when Jeff presented to you all, these were our main takeaways that you wanted to make sure that the plan focused. The Old Town Overlay Zone District and updating that. We had a project a few years ago that got delayed, so it's either picking that up or incorporating a new project to update the Old Town Overlay Zone District. Again, in addition to landmarking, we have zoning regulations that are intended to maintain character. So even if they're not in the landmarking process, we have bulk standards and lot coverage standards that are intended to keep the scale of development appropriate for Old Town. We have an Old Town overlay that has some incentives for landmarking as well as preserving the front of the facade. So that's what that has to deal with. We also have a downtown design handbook that, even if it's not a landmark commercial property in downtown, that helps address historic character within new development in the commercial core of downtown. So you also wanted to talk about addressing gateway areas into downtown as well as the community, affordable housing, and then stronger incentives for landmarking, which has been on your work plan last year and I assume this year as well. So we've had two really big rounds of public input so far as part of this plan. We started off developing a community vision and then what we call core community values. That was a big focus of the community input. We had a big open house. We had a survey that we sent a postcard to every resident in the city. We got over 2,000 residents participating, either in the public open houses or the survey. And we developed those vision and core value statements, which are the foundation for the plan. We've taken that to Planning Commission and City Council for endorsement. So that's what we're moving forward with into the final plan. The second big round of public input were these future growth scenarios. And that took place at the end of last year. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But this is the vision and core values. If you're familiar with our current comprehensive plan, we have something very similar, but this is a lot of words, but our current one is probably about 3 times as big as this. So we really tried to consolidate them and focus in on really what we were hearing from the community and Planning Commission and City Council. So we end up with 6 core community values that are surrounded by the concept, kind of the lens of being equitable, resilient, sustainable, and developing a vibrant community. And so we have As far as our core values, we have community character, community connectivity, environmental sustainability, economic vibrancy, community places, and civic leadership. So there's a lot of areas in here where I think historic preservation and development in and around downtown will play a pretty critical role in probably almost every one of these core values. So in developing that future land use framework, the plan is going to focus, we think, on 4 different opportunity areas. There was also a focus on implementing our housing plan. We adopted our first housing plan last year. There's been a lot of talk about mixed-use development, including in downtown, having ground floor commercial and residential on the upper floors. Has been discussed a lot, and higher intensity development closer to US 36. So here's a map of the city. You can see the 4 kind of core opportunity areas. So the idea was that there's lots of areas of the city that we're calling areas of stability. They're kind of, mostly residential neighborhoods that we don't anticipate a lot of change. So we're really focusing on the commercial areas. We have South Boulder Road area is number 1. The downtown area is number 2. So that includes both downtown East Louisville, which is a redevelopment area, and then the more historic west side of downtown. 3 is the McCaslin Corridor, and 4 is Red Tail Ridge, including the Avista campus. Avista has purchased property in Red Tail Ridge, and they'll be probably looking at ways to reuse their existing campus. So this is the direction we got from City Council on each of those focus areas. I'm going to just focus in on downtown Louisville. These are just principles that we're moving forward as we continue drafting the plan. So we have for downtown, maintain ground floor retail and other street level active uses in the commercial area. But this is kind of coupled with bringing additional housing potentially into downtown. So I think, some of the important commercial properties downtown, we want to make sure we preserve. So allowing more residential in downtown can help activate and help with economic vibrancy in downtown, but it could also put different development pressures on downtown. So it's kind of an interesting pressure that we could see if those policies move forward. It's really taking, so the third bullet down is considered 3-story in some locations, including the future transit. So of course, downtown East Louisville was intended to kind of create our transit-oriented supportive development for the train station. I don't know if you all have been following any of the recent activity around bringing the train to Louisville. With fast tracks, of course, there's been a lot of frustration that the train never came, even though we've been paying taxes for years on it. Last year, RTD conducted a study to try to figure out how to do kind of starter service. So instead of the full service that was envisioned, bringing 3 trains through the corridor down to Denver in the morning, 3 trains back. Also in 2024, the state legislature passed 2 bills that provide additional funding for rail service with the intent of potentially helping get this corridor of rail service. There's a new rail, regional rail, front range commuter rail that is also intending to use this corridor. So part of that state legislation from last year that the governor requested was how do we get the RTD plan to bring rail through here, as well as this front range regional rail, and have a joint project. So actually on March 1st, there was a report from CDOT, RTD, and the Front Range Rail District to the governor and the legislature that has a plan to bring rail, including a stop in Louisville, by 2029. So I think it's going to go to the RTD board. There's actually funding available that has been identified that they think they don't need additional federal grants. So I gave you that very long insight because this is in the core of the historic district of downtown and Delo. So I think it's maybe will help influence kind of your work and your view. I'm not saying rail's coming, but there's been some very major steps on actually having a rail stop in Louisville, potentially I'm going to say 5 to 10 years.
Using the existing rail system, is that what we're
It's using the existing tracks, and there'd have to be modifications to the tracks. But we've been planning a station around South Street for a couple decades now. So, so anyways, with all that, the current draft that our consultants are working on, we've got a couple of goals surrounding community character and heritage, and then a vibrant downtown. And we have some draft strategies. These are high level. They could turn into actual action items. But this is basically what the consultants put forward so far. A lot of this is things that you're already working on, like the Historic Preservation Fund. You could consider looking at updates to the master plan, and then, of course, the Old Town Overlay District. For a vibrant downtown, again, there's a lot of talk about, do we want to change some of our development regulations, especially in the commercial part of downtown, as well as do we want to pick up that Old Town Overlay project again? So I could go back and forth, here they are, but really what we're looking for tonight is, review of this, and then a couple of high-level questions. So are we capturing what's most important to HPC on those goals and strategies? Are we missing anything from that initial list? So I'll just open it up for questions or discussion.
I have a question. The areas that are outside of any of those opportunity zones and are not in downtown proper, there must be some properties in some of those areas that would qualify for landmarking status. Are we limited to these certain areas, or if somebody's got something on South Boulder Road towards where the different housing and apartments is?
For landmarking specifically?
Yeah, we can consider those, right?
Yeah. So that was actually a change. The first 10 years of the funded program, it had to be within the Old Town Overlay. City Council actually changed that about 7 years ago, 6-7 years ago, and opened it up that any structure 50 years old or older, even outside of Old Town, could be landmarked. It does require a supermajority of council to vote on it, but the door is open if there's a project.
Okay.
What are you looking for from us at this
So,
juncture?
sure, yeah, so we've got a couple questions for you here, which is really focused on, here's the current strategies that we're gonna put in the draft plan. This is, we think, right? This is just a draft of a draft. And based on what you're seeing here, 2 questions. Are we capturing everything that you think needs to be captured based on your role as HPC? And are we missing anything that you would like to see included in the plan? And I know it's a little hard because you don't look at comprehensive plans a lot. So, you could also think about projects or initiatives that you think the city should undertake in order to further historic preservation in general. If you have any ideas about that, then we can take those notes as well and figure out how to incorporate that into the plan. So that's generally what we're looking for.
Well, Rob, I think keeping retail on the first story of the downtown area is a great idea. Anything to keep the downtown vital, active and vitalized. So in case there's any commercial properties that want a landmark, they'd probably be more willing to do that if we have a great downtown. So that's a good idea. Thank you.
I've got a question for you. Again, you don't, it's been a while since we've actually been through this exercise, but usually when commercial properties aren't landmarking, but they're redeveloping in downtown, we bring them in for, we have a design handbook. And traditionally, we've brought those into this commission to review against that. And some of you may not have experience with that, but basically, we have a core commercial area, and it says that we allow it, so that's, and then we have a transition area, which is basically the half block that transitions into the residential zones. Everything inside of that, we say it would be appropriate to have some limited 3-story, but it needs to be context-based. And so a lot of 2-story, 3-story is not a by right in the commercial core. And then as you transition into the residential area, it's 2 stories or lower is the maximum. So there's been a lot of discussion about that, including with the comprehensive plan. I'm curious your thoughts on, do you like the height requirements, or would you be interested in maybe loosening some of those height requirements, both in the core or the transition area? Do you think that would have a negative impact on historic character, for example?
I think I would say the height requirements we have right now are, like, I wouldn't increase height requirements at all. I think especially with the potential of the rail coming through, a lot more, I think there could be a lot of changes that would happen quickly in Louisville if we start loosening up a lot of things. So that's one of those hard, like we're gonna change, but we also have to think about, like, visually and spatially, what is Louisville? What does it look like? What does it feel like? And so I think definitely height is one of those distinguishing factors. And I think already the 3-story that we have in Louisville are kind of jarring a little bit, like, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, so I think it's hard because obviously that's the density that we need, like, that a lot of people are looking for. But I don't know if that's the best way to go about it. So, but that's open for discussion, obviously. But I think we've done a good job of maintaining that small town downtown. So, I don't know.
And the zone we're talking about is from Front Street to Main Street to, what's the next street up, Lafarge?
Yeah, where is the Old Town overlay?
Well, and this is
yeah.
commercial
Are they-
specifically as far as
Right.
the height restrictive, right? So it's
But-
Main
right.
Street.
So it's Front Street and Main Street. It's Front Street and Main
Far
Street,
west.
basically down to a half block south of Pine is the core, and then the next half block south to where Crystal Springs is, that's the transition area.
Okay.
And then on the north side, it's the where the Louisville Museum is.
Yeah.
That's the north side of the commercial area. That's just outside the commercial area. So everything south of that is in the commercial area as well. So the first half block is the 2-story transition, and then it goes up to a mix of 3 and 2-story is the idea. So there's been some discussion about, well, why don't we just have 3 stories for the whole commercial core? There's different opinions about that. So it's good to have thoughts on that. You don't have, I'm just trying to kind of
No, it's a good conversation.
get some conversation on it. And
Too, like,
yeah.
the 3-story that we have obviously aren't 3-story from the front of the building, like they are pushed back.
yeah,
right?
the
there's
design,
all
yeah,
kinds of, like, design
yeah.
requirements that way too. But it does change the mass of downtown in general. So does anyone have differing opinions or?
We're talking about like the Chase Bank building and the commercial building across the road, basically.
That
to
would be a,
clear. Those are 3-story.
yep.
So, Yeah, so the Chase Bank is actually only 2 stories.
It looks two-story to
Yeah,
me. That's
so
what I'm
there's Coco Plaza where Picas is in. That's a 3-story, but the 3rd story really meets that was one of the first, I think, 3 stories that met the design standards, because the 3rd story is kind of dormer. It's like it's more of an angled roof with dormers, so the 3rd story is not a sheer 3rd story. The State Mercantile Building is an example of kind of, I think, what we're looking for a 3rd story under the design standards. So it's not a sheer 3 stories. It's supposed to be set back, or the 3rd story is supposed to be, the bulk's supposed to be set back.
Is there an actual height limitation, or it's just 3-story?
There is a height limitation. I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
That's
I
all right,
think-
it doesn't matter
Yeah,
that detail, but
I
just-
think it's probably somewhere around, for the 3 stories, it's probably around 38 feet, I think, is what it is. 2 stories would be less. So anyway, so that's an interesting point of feedback to follow. And then, if we captured everything, that's great too. I know when we do the work plan discussion after this, you'll kind of dig into more really what you want to do over the next year. But anything you want to do, what's the 10-year vision? For example, what's not considered here that I want to put into the strategies is to re-up the tax, right? The tax is going to be up in about 3 or 4 years. So that's an initiative that I think we need to put in the comp plan that's not up here in the next 10 years. Maybe another question for you is, I know you don't dig into the preservation master plan a lot, but I think it was that trying to think when it was adopted, 2013 or 14 maybe, or 15, somewhere in there. It's been a while. If you want to do a big planning project like that again, we could certainly do that, or look at the existing master plan and see if you feel like it is current enough and accurate enough to what you're doing. That's something we could put in the plan as well.
I guess for me, just with bringing this up right now, it's a little hard without having a blow up of the downtown district in general up there to kind of look at where the boundaries are and further define it. I understand there's transitional zone, there's the commercial zone and residential zone, and I get some of that a little bit. One of my concerns is, again, if you start really opening the options up on this downtown area, I think you're gonna get a lot more stuff that's like 908 Main Street, which is right behind Thunderbird Barbers, right there. I believe
Right.
that's the address of that one.
Yeah, I think that might have been built before we adopted design standards, but I'm not sure. It gets referenced a lot, like why we need design standards
Yeah.
on that one. So.
And it's just some of my concern is that as soon as you start trying to pump different transportation and everything down here, and I'm not fighting against it, you have to be aware that that change is probably coming, but as soon as you start opening it up a little bit for more size and everything else, which is counter what the scale of downtown is, which is probably, story and a half to 2 stories is your average, that it will get developed and it will maximize the development.
Yeah.
Well, and I was going to say, sort of jumping off what Linda said earlier, that part of the socioeconomic history of Louisville is sort of the modesty of the architecture, and part of our job is to maintain the tension that there is between sort of perception of what's valuable historically and what is actually valuable because of Louisville's unique character. And I feel like that's sort of where we sit in this context too, is to make sure that that tension is maintained.
Yeah, for me, again, just even jumping into the information that was provided in the packet, just trying to zoom in on the downtown area, it goes haywire and wonky, and I can't get into it.
Yeah, and we're not intending to like really focus in on the downtown design handbook. I mean, it's really interesting, I think, and it's something that could come out of this plan. Is do we want to read? It's a 20-year-old design handbook. Do we want to relook at the design handbook? And if so, that would be a big project for the city. It's probably something we do in the next 5 years, but not anytime soon, unless somebody feels like it's really critical. And I think this group would have a pretty big focus on that. But yeah, I didn't intend to do a deep dive on that, although it's something tangible to talk about.
And just out of curiosity too, the station is gonna go at south and front?
So,
That,
yeah.
like where the bridge, kind of like the underpass, like?
yeah, so
I
we,
know that's
so,
like a building.
yeah, so the city and the Urban Renewal District actually built this underpass just to facilitate the station. And then when the first phases of DLO came in, that was intended to be our train station. Unfortunately, I think there was a moment where they felt like the train was never going to come, and they developed that in a way that doesn't easily accommodate the transit station anymore. So we're actually struggling to figure out where to put the station right now. The streets actually aren't built for circulator buses to come in and out is one issue, and then there's no place for like a hug and go or a platform or anything like that in DLO anymore. So I think if this becomes a real project, we'll be saying, do we want to try to figure out how to still make the station work there, or do we need to find a different location? I think there's a lot of infrastructure that we've invested in there that we'd want to try to find a way to do it, but
Yeah.
we'd have to
Could we
see.
turn the grain elevator into a train station?
It's possible. Yeah, or Pine Street Plaza, which is, just a strip commercial area right now. That could be an area too.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And that was my question too, is like if there was a station there, that just adds a whole lot of
Yeah.
building and everything there. But I was like, where would it even go?
Yeah,
So-
the thing with this type of rail is you actually have to have a crossing to get on both sides, because it's a one-sided platform. So you either have to have a surface crossing or an underpass.
Okay.
So that's why the underpass was so critical here. Pine Street Plaza, you could potentially do a surface crossing to get from one side to the other.
Okay.
Where the grain elevator, you'd probably have to do another underpass somewhere in
Right.
the vicinity there, which are
Yeah, for
very
sure.
expensive.
Right.
So yeah, and we don't need to belabor it. If you think, if you don't have anything that comes to mind and you think of something, you can email me, your thoughts or your ideas if anything comes up later. If you feel like there's a strategy that we're missing or something that you think your group and the city should be looking at in the next 10 years.
I have a question, comment. I don't know if this is the right kind of information or feedback you're looking for, but I'm wondering about the efforts to promote and get the word out more about these programs, because in my dealing with my properties and with talking to a lot of other citizens about it, there's very little known other than, oh yeah, there's some kind of landmarking, people get a plaque. So I'm wondering if in this plan that we would have something that highlights more of a need for self-promotion of what this fantastic program can provide to people here. Because even if we decide, it sounds like it's already been assumed that we're going to be looking at the amounts of grants that are available, the financial incentives. I still fear that unless we really find a way to start beating the drum, we're still not going to get near the activity that we could, because there are a lot of residential and commercial buildings that would qualify and definitely could use restoration work. I don't know if it's, everybody's got a myriad of why they are not taking advantage of this program, but I would assume a lot of it is they just don't really understand how much the committee is willing to do. So that's something I would like to see happening over the course of the next 10 years. This really becomes much more of a get out and let people know, hey, going up to people in the businesses saying, are you aware of this and how can we help you? And also I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to talk about, is there a staff going to be hired and people on staff to fill the role that Emily's taking on now out of her generosity in her time? But Amelia's position has been vacant for what, a half a year or so now?
At least, yeah. So, yeah, so those are great comments about promotion of the program. There's probably a place in this plan to kind of further those policies. We are absolutely trying to hire. We've been through several rounds of trying to hire that position. So I think our staff in the planning department and myself, we're just as anxious as anybody to try to get that filled.
Is it a
So
lack
it's
of,
the highest priority. So, so our position is a bit of a hybrid position, which I think makes it hard to fill. We really don't have full-time historic preservation work. I think when we're really busy in historic preservation, in fact, it's about half-time position. When we first hired this position, we actually hired a half-time person, and then we turned it into a full-time position by giving them half general planning duties. So that's what makes it a little bit hard to fill, because we want someone with historic preservation experience and expertise, but it's a half-time historic preservation position, so that's made it difficult.
and is that because that's all that's budgeted for by the council, or?
No, it's
Could it be
really
turned
just
into
work.
it?
I think it's workload, like a realistic workload of,
And if we were to create
needed.
more of a offensive instead of responsive commission, there still wouldn't be need for a full-time person?
yeah, that's a good question. In our estimation, it hasn't been, but that's something to think about for sure. Is, can we figure out ways to make it closer to a full-time position so it's more attractive? We've thought about that as well. So.
But there's active recruiting going on now?
Yep, it's been probably since the week after Amelia left, there's been active recruiting.
Well, there's a lot of federal employees looking for work now, so maybe.
Yeah. Well, after the meeting, I can tell you a couple stories about that, so. Yeah, but thank you for your comments on the promotion. I think that's great. And I'm curious about maybe just one other pointed question about property acquisition. It's in the toolbox. We've never done it. We've got quite a bit of funding right now that it could be a reality to acquire something, partner, land market, and sell it. You could do residential, commercial. It's a program we haven't developed. And that, again, that's something we could put in this plan. Is anybody, I don't know if you've put much thought into it, but if anybody has opinions about that. I could talk more about how it would work too. I just kind
I
of
think
threw that out there.
there should be a prioritized list of items that we find that we would like to hold on to here in Louisville, and I think that we started to talk about that when Amelia was here, and that's kind of been shelved for a while. So I do think that it would be easily put together as far as targeted properties. I think this will be apparent in about a month.
It's definitely come up a lot, and I think it would be, I think just with the market and with things changing, and there's just a lot of factors, I think that it could be in our best interest just to have that in our toolbox of like, how do we do this so that we're not blindsided if something comes up and we're like, oh man, like I wish we had known how to do, like been able to acquire something, or so.
A full-time staff member could help us with
Right,
that.
they can help that.
Not that
yeah.
I'm lobbying for that.
So I think, yeah, I think it would be, I think the first step is just how would we do it, like logistically, and then like have I don't know if we do a prioritized list of properties that we would say, yes, if these, properties ever came up, we would purchase these, or if we would just have it as a more, I don't know, kind of randomized. But I think it's definitely worth talking about and just figuring it out, just so that it's not this mystery of like we can, but we don't know how. So Yeah, I think it'd be great.
I would agree. I think there'd be easily let's put together a top 10 or something like that and
Yeah, I
then move
don't
on
think
from
it'd
that. And if you could find a way to help keep maintenance up on that and then re-rent them out so you're still not out that whole, amount and just have the upkeep and have it stay in a certain usage, it might somewhat pay back on another side as well.
All right.
Similar to, Boulder County open space stuff where they lease stuff back out.
Absolutely. I think too, like if we were to rent it out or to like landmark it and resell it, like that could be income as well, which could alleviate some of the tax need. I don't know. But we've done the loan, which we haven't got a ton of loans, but that is a way that we can kind of have some income into the fund outside of just tax. So I think anything that we can use the money proactively like that is a good idea. So
I would assume that if something like that were to be in play, that maybe there'd be some sort of a threshold of funds that would have to be there to be able to do it, just so
Right.
we're not putting the main way that we're using this right now, the funds
Right.
for other structures that are not near as significant. You couldn't go down to, $0 out of the whole setup. You'd have to have something in the kitty. But
absolutely. Yeah, it would have to be a big
Yep.
priority.
Yeah, there'd have to be a deep dive, but if conceptually, okay.
Right.
Well, if there's anything else, we can kind of keep mulling on this, or we can go to the next agenda item whenever you're ready. I think we've gotten some good feedback.
One more question on that topic. Is there any disincentive, something that helps to prod along a property owner if they're just letting their property sit vacant for a certain amount of time and is not wanting to talk to other people to take it over or to us if we were wanting? Is there anything that we could use as the stick instead of the carrot?
I assume you're talking about commercial properties, of
Yes.
course, yeah, on that. So this has been a topic of discussion too, about vacant commercial properties. Some cities have done a commercial vacancy tax. We try to do incentives more than anything like that. But cities have done it. We've done things we have a vacancy bonus if a property's been vacant for more than a year. I'm not talking about downtown, any commercial property. We have vacancy bonuses and all kinds of incentives to try to bring new businesses in. But yeah, I mean, you could do a vacancy fee or tax. I've heard of cities doing that.
But I don't know
Are you
that
saying
that would,
like as far as like land, like just disrepair or just vacancy?
yeah, if it's
any-
sitting empty and maybe not total blight condition, but is getting into disrepair and it's an eyesore and it's at a visible spot that we want to make sure is helping the vibrancy of our city, and the owners aren't looking to do anything with it, and they're just willing to let it continue to sit year after year.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's part of our jurisdiction or anything that we should even be involved in as the HPC.
Yeah. It is really more of an economic development tool. Certainly, looking in downtown, when there are vacancies and we're working with property owners, they're well aware that they have a lot of historic preservation fund grants available to them if they're landmarked, or do a conservation easement, or some things like that. So there's existing vacancies that are already landmarked. There's properties that are vacant that could be landmarked. We talk to potential developers all the time and let them know there's, really hundreds of thousands of dollars of available grants to try to make that project work for them. So that's out there. Again, probably not specifically in historic preservation's wheelhouse, but it overlaps.
Could there be just a quick question out of this, I don't need to get deep into this portion, but could there be some sort of a bonus allocation in one of the 4 zones that you've declared as your,
Opportunity zones, yeah.
yeah, opportunity zones, could there be some sort of a bonus applied there if you were to, let's say, find something else in a downtown area that you were to landmark or something of that sort? Like, could there be a trade-off of almost like a commodity type situation? Where if something were landmarked in the commercial downtown area that you then, if you were developing in one of these other, maybe quadrant 4 or whatever it is, I can't remember which ones they are, that you'd get some other added bonus of additional height of 1 floor or whatever else.
Yeah,
Just trying
that's
to
interesting, yeah.
Incentivize it a
Yeah.
little bit, just,
Yeah.
and it's just a question. I don't need to answer right now. but-
Yeah, that's interesting. Kind of a transfer of historic preservation fund benefit to outside. That's, yeah. Because there are some property owners that own multiple properties in the city, including downtown. And if they were doing renovation or of one of their other properties outside of downtown, could there be some that, yeah,
Be a horse trade type
Yeah.
situation.
we could look into that. That's very interesting.
I don't have anything else otherwise.
Yeah, I think to your point, like when you showed the kind of one of the first slides with all the things and just kind of said like historic preservation really plays a part in all of these as far as like more the downtown. But so I think hopefully we can be a part of just the process as we go along
Yeah.
and seeing different ways that we can be creative and support and change things as we see that comes up or whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would just add when the draft plan comes out, hopefully I'm going to say the beginning of June at the latest. Hopefully before then, that please read through it, look through the plan elements, participate. We aren't planning to come back to you formally as a commission, but you're, very welcome, and it'd be valuable because of your role on the commission to participate in the review of the draft and providing comments individually.
Was anyone able to make the present, like the open houses that they had? They are really interesting. So I would highly recommend. There's a lot of engagement. You went to some, yeah. They're really, I mean, just as a resident too, but there's a lot of good information. Okay. Anything else on this? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just thought I'd give it a try. My laptop's about to die, but just give me 1 second.
This is our next item, which is discussion direction for the 2025 work plan with the staff presentation.
loading.
What's up?
Okay.
Some might say neon.
Okay. So good evening. Next on the agenda is a discussion direction for the 2025 work plan. The main goals for tonight are to review the preservation master plan and previous work plans from around 2020 to 2024 to help inform potential projects for the 2025 plan. This is just keeping in mind that we're in mid-March and staff capacity is not at full. The goal is to identify 1 to 3 key projects to focus on for quarter 2, 3, and 4 of the rest of the year. And those would ideally be from previous work plans or the master plan, projects that have maybe been started and not completed, or if there's a few items on your personal lists to get done this year, that's something to discuss as well. The goals for the next meeting, which would be in the April HPC meeting, is to review the final draft for the work plan that will be gathered from notes and discussion taken tonight. Staff will present you a final work plan. That's when timelines will be created and subcommittees will be created as well. So here I've just pulled a few common projects that were mentioned in the previous work plans. The complete work plans can be found in the staff packet as well as their degree of completeness. The 2 most common ones that were mentioned year over year were updates to the Historic Preservation Fund grants, including maximum award amounts and different requirements for grant funding, as well as various public outreach methods to bring awareness to the program. That could include updating handouts, website improvements, social media initiatives, stuff like that. Some other listed projects from previous plans that may have been mentioned once or twice or may have been started and not completed include bringing the blue parrot sign back out, having a landmarked and reviewed but demolished list on our city website with accompanying photos just for informational purposes, having a new interactive online map or updating the existing interactive online map, creating a walking tour brochure, and then a deeper analysis of barriers to landmarking and preservation in general. And then I also have listed some items from our preservation master plan. They do have an action item list towards the end of the document. There's plenty to pull from there as well. There's just a few that I've pulled, which includes draft maintenance best practices for older buildings, more of a just informative thing to give property owners, as well as exploring resident-generated history collection. There's a lot of local residents that have been here for a long time. They have their own stories and histories of their neighborhoods. Analysis of relationships between sustainability and historic buildings, and then creating a preservation resource center. This, I think, was intended to collaborate with the library and the historical museum to just have an all-inclusive place for people to learn more about preservation and restoration and the historic program. Those aren't everything, of course. If you have more ideas, this is just a information gathering session. I've just added a few questions here to help facilitate the discussion. So the first one is, what items do you want to add to the list? Are there any specific years you would want to focus on completing? What do you think should not be on the list based on previous work plans? If there's items that just have shown no progression, or maybe the interest is not, the need is not there anymore, we can consider that. What more information do you need at the next meeting to evaluate the work plan? What can we provide for you? And then what projects are most time sensitive and most important? And again, the goal is to kind of keep it short, 1 to 3 projects this year, quality over quantity, really with the intent of getting some things completed at the end of the year. And then just a reminder, staff it's a 50% historic preservation allotted time for one staff member. Currently, it's being split a little bit between staff, so just keeping that in mind as well. And with that, the discussion, I'm here to help answer any questions you may have. If not, we can just start discussing. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we want to go back to the previous one that had all the, would that be a better place to start, or do you want to start with the questions?
I would be yeah, the
Okay,
slide
we'll
would
just
be
leave it on
good,
there.
I think. So personally, I mean, I think the public outreach is really important, but what I've also noticed as a community member and in conversation with folks is that there's sometimes some assumptions and bias against the program. Like people think it's going to be an obstacle as opposed to a resource. And I think we have to think about how to overcome that. So that it's not just a lack of knowledge. I think some people think that it's going to like cause issues, you know, if they landmark. And so helping people understand how to utilize a resource without that would be helpful.
So outreach, I feel like that's always one of ours. And obviously that could be a big project, but it could also, if we have a subcommittee that can kind of guide and figure out some simple techniques for the year.
I don't want to get too like into the weeds
Right,
of like
no.
brainstorming
Right.
how to accomplish that.
But if we just do a general like outreach, that could be one. One thing I was wondering too, as far as something we should get done this year, is the HSA, like we keep talking about like going through the, figuring out the list, or like, do we still need to revamp any of that stuff? That for the HSA requirements? Is that something we need to, are we good on that? Because I know we changed the amounts, but we didn't
Changed the
really.
amounts last meeting.
Right, we keep talking about,
That could be something if you want to look at the standards and the content.
I don't know.
I think you need to understand, like, I know we had some testimony that they're not great, but
Okay.
we also are following best practice. We're following the state standards. I don't know that there's anything wrong with them.
Okay.
If you wanted to put it on your work plan, we could get examples and you could kind of do a deep dive.
right,
I don't have any obvious recommendations on anything to change.
okay. That's where it keeps popping up, and so I'm like, is this something we need to like, do we need to do the, like, do we need to change the recommendations, like send out the, like as far as the list of recommended,
Oh, yeah, we could change that. That's just an administrative thing. I thought you meant like the scope of work.
Or the scope of
So I
work,
think
that's
if
the
you-
other, I feel like it's all, that
Yeah.
those two things kind of keep coming up a lot, so I don't know if that's something we should just,
I think the scope of work came up once.
okay.
I mean,
Well, I guess I've heard it come up
okay.
quite a few
The
times
P-
as far as like, is it the right, are we getting the good information, or but if staff is like, we're actually fine, like I'm totally trusting and saying
Right.
like, that's fine.
Well,
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
But and maybe you're saying like, I don't know, like maybe it's not to your
I mean,
standards.
I think if you wanted to study it and do a little bit of a deep dive on it, I think, you know, we have provided the scope of work because we did a pretty in-depth study session and we actually went through all the categories.
Okay,
So
that's
I think
good.
if you're all looking at that and being like, well,
Right.
something's wrong here.
No.
Like we're missing a category or we're doing something wrong in what's actually included, then I think it might be worth a deep dive.
Okay, I just want to make sure HSA is taken care of, like, what do you think?
I could see so I'm not looking to dive deep into it either, but with the HSA item, you know, you have your scope of work, you have, obviously we've had some turned in. I don't know if we have, I would have to look and see, but do we have 3 examples of, you know, our kind of gold standard of what we're kind of looking for with those that we're able to provide as examples online where it starts to guide and dictate what we're striving for?
Yeah, we could do some examples online. That's a good idea to show ones that we think are especially complete. I think the issue came up because there was an old one from like 2014 that there was a concern that the structural analysis wasn't adequate.
Yep.
But they did include a structural analysis by a licensed architect. So I think different architects have different depths of skill in that, and I think we largely address that by requiring a structural engineer on all HSAs. So I think, you know, if we're going to do a gold standard, we probably want to come up with 2 or 3, you know, 1 or 2 commercial ones, 1 or 2 residential ones from multiple architects
Yep.
that show good examples. I don't know who's the judge, you know, I think.
It gets hard because then are you
Yeah.
promoting others or something of that sort? So.
Exactly. So I mean, maybe we could do that. I feel like
Could we find
I
one
don't
that's
know that- yeah.
outside of our area that wasn't like?
we could ask
totally-
the state. That's a great idea because the state gets these. They have the same scope of work. So we could maybe get some from the state historic office.
Yeah, something that's outside of our area where it's
Yeah.
not really
Yeah.
focusing people on any one entity here. I
Right.
would see that as being an issue
Yeah.
if we did local ones.
Yeah, and again, you know, most of the architects that are doing them here are familiar with our program, and there's probably different levels of depth of analysis, even within the ones that we get. But yeah, it's definitely worth thinking about. But I think for your projects, do you want to put that on your work plan and really look at scopes for HSAs? It's a valid thing if you want to add it. But again, we could probably, because of how much time we have left, if we update the grants, that's probably 2 to 3 meetings for you all,
Yeah.
right? To like really get into the grants. And so then you've got maybe a couple other items that you could work on in your monthly meetings before the year is up. So just think about like what might be the most important. If you do a subcommittee for outreach, that subcommittee can meet separately. You know, you've gone to the farmers market, the street fair, you've put up booths. I don't know that that's necessarily a work plan item. You could just create a subcommittee
Right.
and ask for volunteers and put a schedule together to do those outreach things. If you wanted to be involved in developing material, that's probably a work plan item where we'd bring some things to you to react to and to help develop.
From what I've seen for the HSAs, I haven't seen any issue in needing to address that right now.
Okay, that's great. That's all I just wanted to knock that off if we
Okay.
don't. Okay. And so for outreach, would you say it could be subcommittee or should we haven't done any anything for a long time, development. But what do you think?
What has been most, I'm relatively new here,
Totally.
so like what has been most effective in the past? Because my gut instinct is like human to human interaction, like open house style, answer questions. It shows some case studies to people so they understand like what's possible,
Right,
and sort of what the end result of the process can be.
right. So when we were going through the tax the second time to get it renewed, we did a lot of the farmers markets and like just being available.
Yeah.
And that is obviously like people get to ask their questions right away, like all those things. But I think too, like there are sometimes just neighbors that just don't even know in the community that we like, 'cause I think that was one thing we were gonna send out. Like we wanted to have a brochure or something that kind of went through like how the program had changed because we increased our amounts, and then that never happened. And so there's definitely some, just some procedural and amount changes that people don't know about unless they like try to find it on the website and that kind of thing. So I don't know. We did send out one thing,
So we did a
we-
postcard. We did a postcard mailing to every homeowner
Right.
within the Old Town overlay.
Yeah. But we just talked about like having more things like available like here where people, if they dropped in, they could have like a really clear, like, you know, so that's one thing we haven't done except for, right, the mailing when it first
I think a glossier, nicer promotional flyer
Right.
could be something that we could develop and then bring to you all as again, pending staff capacity.
Right, and
That
that's the
might-
only
yeah.
thing is that's a lot of staff, that's a higher staff involvement item.
I think that's something if we get, I know we'll get to updating the grants this year. So once those are approved, that's a really great time to put together a new glossy
Right,
flyer
totally.
and postcard. And so we could bring, we could work with our communications staff and try to put something together and bring that to you all. I don't know that there's a lot of work for you on that because hopefully we'll put it together and you'll just kind of endorse it and maybe make some recommendations rather than developing it yourselves. Unless any of you want to do that, you're welcome to,
Anyone graphic,
if any of you have that skill.
totally.
Yeah.
So our first item would be outreach would include a subcommittee for physical human outreach and then a brochure from staff after we
It
do
sounds
the,
like that's doable,
right.
like.
The two might go hand in hand with increasing the amounts, so.
Well, and then that's what I was gonna say is the next item would be increasing amounts. So that would kind of be probably our two top,
Is-
line items.
Has there ever been like a open house day where it's promoted and a dozen or half dozen, however many, landmarked properties, the property owners allow other people to come in and it's a promoted open house? We've done those?
Well, that was the museum, but yeah, it wasn't part of, it
Yeah,
wasn't part of us, but
I think the landmark ceremony is the closest to what you're thinking of. I mean, certainly that's open
right,
and people
Yeah, I meant,
sometimes open their house to that.
right. And we've talked too about like having something at the library, like a open house thing where people can come. There's kind of a presentation about like what is landmarking and we could even have people that have landmarked where people could ask questions of actual, but the open house specifically where people can go into the houses.
yeah, like a realtor's open house,
Right.
but it's
we haven't
not
done
for sale. It's just to help spread the information about
I
how
think
this
one of the
works.
hangups kind of in the past before we did landmarking ceremony was just public notice for like because we'd all be convening and be like a public meeting, like a moving public meeting kind of thing. So I don't know. I think that was in the past just kind of one of the confusing, like, could we do it? And we just didn't. So if that makes sense. So,
Well, once we have a subcommittee for
Yeah.
outreach opportunities, you can dig into that.
but I think it'd be worth looking into for sure because people love going into houses.
Seeing old
And so,
people's stuff, yeah.
yeah, so that's not a bad idea, but that can be part of the human outreach. So yeah, that's a good idea. And then, so, updates to the HPF in general, all the amounts and requirements and everything would definitely be something we want to address this year. But I would agree with that.
Yep.
To some extent.
I can say we had enough of a discussion with the blue parrot sign that we I think figured out where a good possibility for that thing to land would be, and it's just, I don't know if I'd really explore that too much, and I can talk about it offline or in a subcommittee or whatever else needs to happen, but I don't think that needs to be an item that's on here. I would encourage it to just remain as an item that's in the parking lot, of things to discuss. I don't know if you have an area like that, you could just have random stuff that never fully came to fruition, but could be addressed again at a later date. It's always nice to have that sitting there and available, but
Are there meeting times designated for the committee as a whole to get together and brainstorm other than subcommittees that is not a designated time that there has to be applicants for us to review, applications to review?
it'd be more of like a working session.
Yeah,
right?
So you could set aside, I mean, you can have special meetings if you want. So because of open meetings laws, if more than two of you meet together, it has to be publicly noticed and you have to let the public attend.
If they want to attend, yes.
So that's where a two-person subcommittee can be really valuable to do a lot of brainstorming and work and then bring it back to the commission at an open session. You can certainly schedule time on your regular meetings here too, and just put the topic on the agenda, and then you can have that session. It's, do you want staff support? Do you want some staff materials, or do you want to have a commission member lead that, that discussion? We would just need to work with you on that, depending on what you wanted to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know that I have a specific agenda at the moment. I'm just wondering, I'm starting to get a lot out of this, especially because I'm newer. So I just always feel communication and getting to know what everybody else is thinking and on their minds, and what's not being brought up during the formal agenda. You seem to get, I think people get a lot out of just brainstorming.
No, absolutely. So yeah, we can schedule, like you said, work sessions. Last year we did a retreat kind of thing where we met at the library and just kind of hashed out a lot of big plans and visions and stuff.
And it was
So-
posted, and the public could attend if they want. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, again, that is staff reliant for those more, but we can definitely do it.
So
So,
back to the staff question. With the staff, when you get some of the applications coming in, will this commission have any opportunity to be involved in the interview process and help make the selection?
We traditionally haven't had boards and commissions take part in hiring staff. There's a lot of reasons for that.
Such as, just so to
I
educate
mean,
me a little bit.
there's HR reasons, and then I think that the staff does a lot that you all aren't familiar with or overseeing. So frankly, there could be a position where you just love someone, but they don't meet really what the city is looking for and is needed, and that could cause some issues. And so I think those are some of the reasons. I mean, there have been boards and commissions that they've wanted to be involved in hiring consultants or staff. And there's really a lot involved in what our HR requires us to look at and what we're looking for beyond how they interact with you. So that's the best way to explain it.
How the town got to the last 3 city manager applicants last month or whatever it was, had the applicants come and talk to, it was general public. Because I'm not thinking that should be something where the committee here should have the right to make the decision, but just to have some input like the public did for the city manager position and gave their top 3, ranked the 1, 2, and 3 who they thought would be the best. That was kind of what I was thinking in my mind, that we will be working hand in hand with this person for however many years we're on this board. And hopefully they are a person who sticks around long.
I would just say that the reason we haven't been able to hire someone is because it's a hard hiring environment in addition to the way it's structured. I don't want to say we did have some really great candidates. We had one job offer out to an amazing candidate. There were a couple months of back and forth, and it didn't end up working out for personal reasons. So, we've had a lot of other candidates who want to just do historic preservation, so that's something to consider. But it's complicated, and I think it might be even more appropriate. I'm happy to deep dive this discussion with any of you individually, rather than kind of in a public forum as well.
Okay.
Yeah, in my opinion, some of the stuff that we've listed already seems feasible. I don't know if adding a lot on top of that right now without having somebody to kind of guide and direct this a little bit more as far as staff that's more directed at it. Not just saying you guys aren't available and free. I don't know what your setup and time frame is. And it seems like at this point, until somebody is permanently in that spot, I wouldn't bite off more than you can chew on that. setup.
Yeah, that's fair. I really appreciate that. Thank you. You know, we'll do our best too. And if you make a list of, if you add 1 or 2 things to this list, I won't promise we'll get to it, but we'd love to, you know, if you have a priority also. So I do think once we get a new staff member, and we will, they come with a lot of great ideas too, that they could facilitate work plan items. So,
I think too, from having previous experience with having onboarding a new staff, it's, if we get too many things going, then it's really hard to pass some of that stuff on. Like, that's just kind of chaotic also. So just keeping it simple and like doing what we have really well. And this point, like just focus on outreach this year, and this can be our outreach year. And then, yeah, and then we can, when the new person comes, we can kind of hit the ground running with other things. So, and then I was looking to like did you say that the interactive online is going to be like defunct pretty soon? Is that what you said they were saying?
Yeah,
like it'll just
so-
go away.
Yeah, it would, so when we hired an in-house GIS
Yeah.
manager, they took a look at it and they said that the software is gonna go out of date in a couple years and it'll slowly just stop. It'll glitch and then it'll stop working
Yeah.
altogether, so.
So I was just thinking though, like with our outreach, like that, like the interactive map, the walking tour brochure, like those are all part of outreach. So we might just kind of have like an outreach conversation of like, let's just make some subcommittees on who wants to do the map and who wants to do the walking tour and who wants to do some open houses or something, and just kind of see like if we can get some of that done. So, but that's all under outreach. So I'm just saying like we could kind of check off multiple things under that category. But does anyone have anything? So really it's outreach and increased amounts are our 2 goals for the year.
Yeah.
And we can always add or change things if things come up, but is that good for everyone?
There was something I remember reading, seeing a couple times, I didn't know what it was a coloring book. And I don't know, is that something that's supposed to be up here and got missed, or it's just something that's been dropped, or?
It was a big process of creating a coloring book, and it's kind of, we basically stopped. We have some coloring pages that we had an artist draw up, and we have access to them where we can use them for outreach. So if we had an open house and kids came, or if we were at the farmer's market, yeah, it's something that's interactive and
So it's
fun.
nothing we have to add on here?
No,
Okay.
it's done, it's completed.
Okay.
And it's in its form, not necessarily what we were originally planning, but it is a complete project.
Things evolve.
Yeah, so, yeah, but it was in the
Okay.
packet, so you saw that correctly. But, yeah, but that's something we can pull out too. It's a tool that we created that we can use for any of our public outreach events and stuff, so. All right, anything else on this?
Nope.
All right, any updates from staff?
Just a few. There were no alteration certificates. There's 2 demolition review applications. Both will be brought to a full hearing next month. One's for 1016 Main Street. The other is for 1117 Lincoln Avenue. Other items, just to keep note, City Council will have their first hearing on our ADU ordinance. That is not the correct date, I don't believe. Sorry, it was supposed to be, I believe, the 15th of April. And that would be their second hearing. I'm sorry. They will have their first hearing on Tuesday, March 18th, which is tomorrow. The second hearing will be later in April. The packet is available online. There are some Old Town implications, including allowing maximum ADU heights at 25 feet. There's also some preservation incentives as well, so you could take a look at that. And then landmark ceremony details will be discussed at the next meeting as well, because our landmark ceremony is still set for mid-May. And our next Historic Preservation Commission meeting is Monday, April 21st at 6:30. And that's all from staff. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. Any updates from commission members?
Nope.
All right. Our last item is to adjourn. Does anyone want to?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Have a
guys.
great night.
Thank you, guys.
Recording stopped.
You're very patient.
Thank you.